Hi, and welcome to the Love to Mom podcast. I'm your host, Jerry, and as always, I'm joined by my holier than thou co host and mother, Christy.
Wow. That feels like a diss.
I guess we'll see as the show continues how true
Okay.
that is. Um,
Oh,
but it's true. What the newspapers are saying, we are doing Oh God, the hit 1977 film. Is that right?
I think that is correct, yes.
1977's film starring John Denver and George Burns mainly.
Mhm.
And this is one that you picked.
It
So,
is.
do you want to maybe give some backstory why you picked this one?
Sure, yeah. Um, well, I feel like this is a common theme running through the movies that I pick. It's that, um, 1977 1977-year-old or 1977, Christy would have been 5 years old.
Nice.
It was a staple on HBO at the time.
Mm,
Once it came to TV, it was a staple. It was on all the time. And in fact, all 3 of them were on.
mm.
Um, so I have memories, like bits of memories about all 3 of those movies. I have not seen it though. I don't know, maybe since 78 or 79. I mean, it's been,
Wow.
so how long is that? 40 some years?
Yeah,
Yeah. I have a real love for John Denver.
it's
Not
great.
necessarily like I like some of his music. I'm not very familiar with a lot of his music catalog.
Sure.
What I knew John Denver from was this movie and also from the Muppets Christmas album, which was also a personal favorite, and the Muppet movie, which I think he was in the regular old Muppet movie or he had an episode on the Muppet Show,
He has an episode of The
something
Muppet
like that.
Show,
Okay.
and it's very good.
So that's really what I knew him from. And George Burns, I didn't know at all until I watched this movie, and I kind of fell in love with him. So
Yeah, he's great.
uh, he's great. So yeah, that's my history with the movie, and that is why I picked it. It's because I was anxious to go back and watch it and see what it was like. So
All
I really
right.
enjoyed it.
I really
How
enjoyed
about
it too.
you? You did?
I don't have that much of a backstory.
No.
I was briefly aware of its existence, didn't know anything about it, and then you picked it.
Yeah.
Uh, I think you brought it up as like, oh, you listened to this John Denver album. We should do the movie that he's in.
Hmm.
And so you were in town this weekend, and we watched it together,
Yeah.
and it was fantastic. I really, really liked it. I think
Wow. Okay.
I think I gave it 4 stars.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I am shocked. You could knock me over with a feather right now.
I think.
I did not think you liked it that
Oh, I
much.
loved it.
I'm so surprised.
There
Okay, well, I can't wait to talk about this.
well, there was a moment like while we were watching it where I'm like, this is so cynical. I love it.
I
Because
do remember you saying that.
yes, it is it's weird because I mean, it does have Christian overtones, but
Mhm,
the way that it portrays organized religion as a whole is very pointed. And it's like very cynical. Like I said, I was like, that
that
is
is true.
shocking for
Mhm,
a movie made in the late 70s. I know John Denver was pretty religious.
mm,
Seeing that in the movie was a little bit like, oh, I wonder what's going on there. I wonder what the backstory is. I don't know much about George Burns and what his religious beliefs are.
mm,
But I was just shocked. I thought this was going to be a backdoor Christian movie. And I think in a way it is, but it really is more of a like spiritual movie
mm,
where um and I guess maybe deist, is that how
mm,
you pronounce that?
mhm. Yeah,
Where you believe in a god but you don't necessarily believe in any of the organized religions. It kind of gave me those vibes in its
mhm,
portrayal of God played by George Burns, where there's a moment, and I don't want to jump right to maybe one of the best scenes in the movie, where they give him all those questions
mhm.
and he has to answer them.
Yeah,
Um, where he says like Jesus was my son, but Buddha was also my son, Muhammad is my son, you are my son, everybody in the whole entire
Mm,
world is my son or
mhm,
daughter. And
mhm,
I was just like, wow, that feels very like sacrilegious to imply that, like, especially during this time where
mhm.
like God is pretty much represented equally in all of these religions. It's just different culture groups have kind of assigned him different characteristics in their own way. And I was like, wow, that's very heady. And I guess maybe some of that is due to the kind of like dripping cynicism and like just contempt for American life that was present in Hollywood in the 70s.
Mm.
But man, I just thought it was really, really great and really smart too. I was shocked.
I am tickled pink over listening to you talk about this. I really had no idea you liked it that much. We tried really hard not to talk about this when we watched it because we knew we were gonna have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
I did hear you say the comment about it being cynical, and I was like, "Oh, boy," because 'cause I'm sitting there watching it and I'm thinking, "Oh, no. He probably feels like, oh, it's like a Christian propaganda movie." That's kinda what I was thinking you were feeling as I was
No.
listening to it, like, and I think I was listening to it in, like, who you're with colors maybe how you're watching it. For
Sure.
me, I sat there and I was like, "Ooh, is he really hating this? How does he feel about this? Is this too, like, religious?" Like, there's part of me that was thinking, "Oh, does this feel too, like, preachy?"
Mm,
So I wasn't really sure how you were feeling about it. Um, and I would say, like, the first part of the movie is pretty straightforward. There isn't much cynicism in the first part of the movie, I don't feel
no.
like. It really kinda comes in, as we get a little further in and we start bringing in, like, the televangelist, which is Paul
Yes.
Sorvino.
Yeah.
Like, we start to get, some stuff there. But I am just so glad that you liked it. I'm so glad you liked it.
Oh, I
I
like.
think I think George Burns is Jewish.
Oh, okay.
I will double check, but I feel like that's the case. So that is his background.
Okay.
I'm going to double check that. But also, I think about John Denver being a hippie,
Yes.
which kind of makes me feel like, I mean, I don't know, is he a religious person or not? I don't really know. He was raised in a Jewish household. Let's see,
Okay.
but he later expressed an interest in Presbyterianism.
Oh.
So it says he never officially converted, but he did maintain a positive view of Christianity and faith.
Hmm.
And here's a quote from him. "I know how hard it is in these times to have faith, but maybe if you could have the faith to start with, maybe the times would change. You could change them. Think about it. Try and try not to hurt each other. There's been enough of that. It really gets in the way." Is that a quote from the movie?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it
Well,
does
that's
go along
interesting.
with the sentiment of the movie.
Yeah, it does. It really does. That's why I wondered maybe it was just a anyway, that is his father was a substitute cantor at the local synagogue.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah. So anyway, that's his faith background, which is
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um so yeah, I really enjoyed it too, but I have to say I was kind of like watching it with you in mind. So
Oh,
uh I the whole time I was like, "Oh no, this is too preachy. He's gonna hate it. He's gonna hate it."
no.
And because I didn't have a lot of memory of it, I was like, was it really a Christian movie? And I just never really picked up on it as a kid. So I was kind of watching it um, with that lens, like because you're a kid, you don't always necessarily pick up on some of the deeper themes of a movie. So I didn't really have any idea what we were looking at when we were walking into it. I was like, maybe it is
Sure.
like a Christian movie, and I just don't remember it as being that. So, um, well, that is interesting. Wow,
Yeah.
great. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it's really good. And I guess maybe before we go any further in this discussion, maybe
Mhm.
we should talk about our own religious
Sure.
beliefs just to
Yeah.
kind of establish that baseline.
Mhm.
Um, I guess I don't really know what I am. I don't think I would like full on say that I'm an atheist. but I don't necessarily subscribe to any other religion. Um, and I wouldn't say that I'm particularly spiritual either. I'm more of a what you see is what you get kind of guy. Uh, but you are very different from me in that
I
aspect.
am. Yeah. So I consider myself a Christian. I want to qualify that with the fact to say I'm not like a Christian nationalist or anything crazy like that. A lot of people would probably say I'm too progressive to be a Christian, but to me, for me, my faith is very central to who I am. And I really consider, um, while I'm a part of organized religion, I do have a church that I go to. It's a very diverse church with a lot of different thought. It's racially diverse, socioeconomically diverse. There are people all along the spectrum in the particular church that I go to. And uh, I just, it is not like a super legalistic or rigid sort of church. It is more like about a relationship. And so that's kind of where I come down on it right now. I think, um, I believe that God loves us and that I'm not interested in a bunch of rules and regulations around that. Like to me, it's more just about that. So
Sure.
um, that God loves us and I love Him, and that is how I choose to approach it. Of course, I do read the Bible, but I also understand that there are different interpretations. So that's kind of where I come down on it. I don't consider myself like a really rigid, legalistic sort of Christian. I'm definitely much more accepting than
Sure.
most like mainline denominations, maybe. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay. Well, now that we've
Yeah.
established that you're not racist,
I'm
um,
not racist. I'm not a homophobe.
okay.
I don't, yeah, didn't vote for a certain person who's our president right now. Like, I just don't fit the mold in some ways. Not
Sure.
that all Christians do subscribe to that, but there is definitely a feel in our society today that if I say that that's who I am, that there's automatically a thought of who I am, but I don't fit that mold of or the preconceived notion of what people may think that is.
Sure.
So,
And I will go it so far. I'll bump your reputation a little bit in
ah,
saying that you are maybe one of the most accepting people that I know. And that
oh,
you take a lot of steps to make sure that your workplace and a lot of the places that you go, you like to spend
mm,
time in diverse spaces and you like to uplift voices that maybe may not have that anywhere else.
that's one of
So
the nicest things you've ever said about me. Thank you. That's so nice. I could cry right now, but I won't.
I just really want to make sure that people don't get the wrong idea about you.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
So I'll come in as an unbiased third party because I am
Sure.
unbiased, even though you are my
Of course.
mother.
Yeah.
Uh, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, I think now we can talk
Yeah.
about the movie. And this might
Mhm.
be a movie that might be worth talking about the plot a little bit more in detail because I don't know how many people have seen it.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It
I would imagine not very many.
Yeah, because it's not on anything. We had to rent it.
Mm-mm. Mhm.
Um, so, it's not super accessible. It's, a little bit, but not super. But I guess maybe just basic plot synopsis. John Denver is a assistant manager at a grocery store. Um, but one day he gets a letter that just says you have been invited for an interview, gives the address and the time, and just like be there. And he basically tries to throw it away 2 times, but somehow that note keeps coming back. And so eventually he decides to leave his job. Well, not leave it, but he's taking some time and he's going to go to this interview. And in this interview, he comes, I was going to say face to face, but it isn't face to face. It's face to radio slash
Mm.
intercom with God, who tells him, I have a very important message for you to deliver to the world, and you have to be the person to do it. And shenanigans ensue, as you can probably imagine.
Mhm.
But that's just kind of the basic plot. So over the course of the movie, John Denver is kind of convinced that this is real, and then goes on to spread this message as best as he can, getting it in newspapers. He goes on talk shows. He tries to get this like ratified by a board of religious experts and theologians. And I think that's where like the once that part starts, it feels more like cynical, kind of like
Mhm.
pointing out these different aspects of society, how these groups would react to someone claiming this rather lofty claim that he has spoken and seen God.
Mhm.
Basically, a new coming of a prophet. How would the world react? And I think that's kind of the basic idea of the movie and where it stems from,
Mhm.
um, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting idea, and I'm glad that they did it as well as they did, because I could see this very well turning into a Pure Flix movie that was just like, this guy's
Mhm.
visited by prophets, and a bunch of communist gay people said, "Oh no, you are not a prophet." And then all of the good Christians, like, this guy is a prophet. I believe him for the first time because I'm not like doubting Thomas. Uh,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
it could have easily devolved into that, but it really
Yeah.
doesn't. And the
Mm-mm.
message of the movie isn't so much be religious and worship God. It's like, be good to each other, be nice. Let's promote peace and justice and equality above all else. And let's see if we can make this thing work. Because so far it ain't working.
Mhm.
Which is like pretty much a direct response to the like counterculture movement in the 60s that kind of fizzled out once everybody was murdered by the FBI. But that this is not the
Oh.
time to talk about that.
Oh, that's funny.
So
Yeah, that's a good synopsis.
I guess so. So I guess I'm not really sure where to start in
Yeah.
like our actual discussion of it.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I think one thing to say that I think that I thought was interesting as a place to where they started the movie and where we end the movie is, these things are happening. And he's like, I don't understand what's happening. And he does not seem to be a person of faith. His wife is. Um, but she was like, it seemed like she believed in God, but wasn't maybe not, they weren't necessarily like church going people or
yeah.
anything like that. But she had a faith of some sort, and he really didn't. So I thought that was interesting too, that that God didn't come to her.
Hmm.
He didn't come to somebody who, already felt like she knew him. That he very specifically went to the person who did not believe in anything of that sort. Which was interesting because then you could watch him walk through having to he was like a doubting Thomas, really. He was like, you need to show yourself to me. I
Right.
don't, prove it. You have to prove it because, like, why would you choose me? It doesn't make any sense. I'm nobody great. I don't even believe in you. I don't
Right.
know why why you've chosen me. I think that's interesting, an interesting choice.
I think so too. And I think that
Mhm.
that only helps the point of the movie in like it's widening its appeal. Because
Mhm.
if John Denver was playing this super religious guy or even like a religious leader, then that would
Mhm.
almost be like it would kind of get rid of the first act where it really is
Mhm.
just like he's like I don't understand. And
Mhm.
at that point John Denver is very much the audience insert asking a lot of the questions that we the audience are. It's like, why did you pick this guy? Like, it doesn't really make any sense. And like, why don't, and like, there's like some pretty lofty questions asked in the first act where it's like, why don't you do something? Like, we're falling apart.
Mm.
We need your help. And George
Mhm.
Burns just is basically like, nope. Which I guess is one way to answer that question.
Well, he was very much like not he wanted people to have free will
Yeah.
and not to insert himself, and he was allowing people to have agency in fixing it themselves. Like
Yeah.
it's up to you guys to do it now. I created it. Now it's all you, which I think is interesting too, to
Yeah.
say, you know, you have some ownership in what happens. While I think that it's good to pray, you also have to do something. And
Yeah.
I think that was a really good example of that. Like you can pray, and I do think praying is important, but I also think it's important to do something with your hands and your feet to,
Yeah.
make a change, to do something. We have been able to do that. And so I feel like that was a great example in this movie of like, yes, I could do it if I wanted to, but you guys need to do it. Like,
Right.
yeah, I thought that was good.
I think so too. I guess maybe the next big question I was going to ask you is what did you think of God's portrayal in this movie? Because it's very
Mm,
different than what we've seen even in other comedies like Bruce and Evan
mm,
Almighty, where there is that
mhm.
a little bit of a comedic edge, but God is pretty much like an omnipresent, neutral
Mm,
good. Whereas
yeah,
George Burns in this, he's a little sneaky guy. He's always up
he
to
is a little.
tricks.
He is well, and he has feelings that, like, if we're talking about that religious council toward the end, you have people from every denomination represented in this group of people, and you have this stereotypical Southern televangelist sort of Jerry Falwell like character,
Yes.
um, who is just despicable. And like, it was kind of great to see God be a little edgy
Yeah.
like that. I really liked George Burns's portrayal because while he is a comedian, and that is, his backstory, he was back in the day of radio. He and his wife Gracie had radio shows, so he has been around for a very, very long time. Um, that they could have played it up and made it very comic, but instead it was very subtle. He was still funny, and maybe it was funny just because it was him. I don't know. Um, there were definitely some funny parts, but it wasn't overly comedic. I didn't think there were. It was like he could get you right between the eyes at times. He
Hmm.
would he would just drop this little nugget and you're like, "Wow, that's something dropped in the middle of this movie
Yeah.
here." Um so yeah, I mean I enjoyed the fact that it was him.
Yes.
Um I really did. I love his glasses and how they magnify his eyes and stuff. There's just something very endearing about the physicality of George Burns, like the
Yes.
sweet, sweet little old man. I really liked that. Um, and he's a straight shooter, and I like
Yeah.
that too. Like he's not overly verbose. He says what he needs to say. It's not like a movie full of speeches. It is, maybe a sentence or two, but those two sentences are there's a lot to those sentences. So I feel like the writing on this was really sharp,
Yes.
um, without having to over explain everything. I really thought that was well done.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Mm.
I think it
Mhm.
is like an especially shocking choice. Like, I'm thinking of like even movies that came out before this, like the Ten Commandments, where
Mm.
God is like this almighty, omnipresent force. I don't even know if you see God in that movie or if it's just like implied. It's been a
I have no
hot
idea.
minute since I've seen it.
I don't think I've ever seen it. I've seen bits and pieces, but never the whole thing.
Well, me and Dad split it up among
Mm.
four viewings because it's like 4 hours
Whoa.
long. It's a
Oh, wow.
long movie. I think they had an intermission and everything.
Oh.
But this was like when I was 9,
Mm.
10, a long time
Wow.
ago.
You were just
Uh,
a pipsqueak.
yeah, I don't really remember most of it, but
Mhm.
I think that's like the I don't know, the historical epic about Christianity that comes to mind from that
Mm.
era, where it is
Mhm.
it's like the whole book of Exodus in one movie.
Right.
So it's a lot. But
Mhm.
like compare God's portrayal in something like that to this, it feels very deliberate in that it is
Mhm.
like, let's pick this old, tiny, skinny little guy with big old glasses that make him look goofy. He's got big old
Yeah,
ears.
he does.
He's
He
like
does.
the exact opposite of what you would
Mhm.
picture any god looking like. I mean, look
Mhm.
at any depiction of God, and none of them look like George Burns. It feels like
No.
a very deliberate choice to make
Mhm.
God appear as a little old man. And I respect it. I think it was a
Mm.
really, really great choice.
Mhm.
Um, just in that, like, on a subconscious level, it makes sense why he would want help from someone like John Denver, a very
Mm.
muscly young man, I would
Mm.
describe him as.
Oh,
but
John.
but it makes sense that he would pick someone younger to help him spread the word, um,
Mhm.
because I don't think if George Burns actually wanted to lead a crusade of sorts to help humanity, I couldn't see him doing it, especially at this time. So on a subconscious level, it works, but also in like it's just subverting your expectations of
Mm.
what
Mhm.
God would be. And I feel like the whole movie is kind of full of that, where
Mhm.
there are maybe ideas of what you think a god or a deity would do that George Burns just straight up doesn't do.
Mhm.
Um, and just the way he's talking, it isn't like, old English. It isn't like he's citing scripture and verses. We watched Two of a Kind also.
Yes.
And
Yes.
um, s- sorry to Gene Hackman, but like for some reason he's like quoting Shakespeare, and then like
Yes.
his portrayal of God is very like just tired. I'm over it.
Mm.
I don't want to be God anymore. I just want to kill everybody and be done with it.
Yes.
I'm like, that's not fun, and it's not
Mm.
necessarily a good representation of a deity or something. Whereas I feel like
Mhm.
George Burns also not a great representation of a deity, but I think it works better in the story and the message that it's trying to get across.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think Two of a Kind. Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen it, Two of a Kind, Olivia Newton-John, John Travolta, Scatman. What's Scatman's
Scatman
last name?
Crothers, the best.
Yep. Yeah, it has a Bananaramas sort of cast, and it is a terrible, terrible movie.
Yes.
Uh, so when we were together, we were like, "Oh, we should watch." See, so Kara had. Oh, we were talking about doing Rhinestone, but it didn't have subtitles, so we couldn't do that. So then she's like, "Well, I brought Two of a Kind, and that one did have subtitles." So we watched that one,
Hmm.
and it also had a God theme
Yeah.
where Gene Hackman plays God in this one, but only the voice,
Yes.
and he wants to end the world, and that he has three angels that are three, yeah, no, four angels that are wanting to fight for humanity, to say there are still good people, you can't destroy the world. And then there's a Satan character, and so there's a bit of a battle between good and evil, and that's kind of the premise behind that
Hmm.
movie, is that God's done and Satan wants everybody down with him, and it is a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
um it's a whole thing. George Burns, um I feel like, while his message was like, you have to get it together.
Yeah.
Like, I need you guys to get it together. It did not have the same tone as Two of a Kind did.
Oh
Two of a
no.
Kind is, I'm exhausted. I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. George Burns is like, he wants things to get better. He doesn't want to end things. He just wants things to be better for people.
Right.
And that is pretty stark difference, I guess,
Yes.
between the two. The lack of like defeatist. He
Yeah.
still believes in people and just wants them to step up and do what they need to do.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
let me see. Do you know when Two of a Kind came out?
It was the early 80s. I'm going to say 82 or 83, I'm guessing.
80, yep, 83.
Okay.
Okay. So I was gonna say if this came out in the 70s, it would make a little bit more sense. The
Mm,
fact that Two of a Kind came out in the early 80s makes absolutely no sense.
mm,
When like Christian nationalism was just starting to be a thing,
mhm.
I'm shocked that a movie that portrayed God as being fed up with the
Mm.
world and wanting to kill everybody got
Yeah,
greenlit. Um, but I don't know if it was a flop. I have to imagine it was because it was
it was.
absolutely terrible.
It was
Um,
terrible. Yeah, it was a flop. I loved it because Olivia Newton-John was in it, and she was my hero. But And John Travolta. He was so stinking handsome in that one. He was still in his very handsome phase,
Yeah.
but I thought it was great. But again, 1983, is that what you
Hmm.
said?
Hmm.
I was 11. And at that point, I already loved Olivia Newton-John, so it wouldn't have mattered what she did. I loved her in Xanadu too, and Xanadu was also a big flop, so it didn't matter. I just loved her.
That's understandable, I think.
I got my ears pierced and my hair permed for her. I wanted to be Sandy at the end of Grease so badly.
Oh, you wanted to be Sandy at the end?
Yeah, that's
Oh.
why I got my hair permed and my ears pierced. I was 6 years old, and I, like, cried for weeks to my mom, "Please let me get my ears pierced." And she was like, "No, you're too young." And I wanted to be Sandy so bad. And so she gave me a home perm and let me get my ears pierced, and I was very brave, and I did it because I wanted it so badly. But she fried my hair with a Tony perm, and we had to cut it off
Oh no.
because it, like, burned my hair, and so I didn't look like Olivia Newton-John at all. Then I just looked like a girl with pierced ears and super short hair because we had to lop it all off. But anyway,
At least you got to show off the ears.
I did get to show off the ears, but I was never allowed to wear hoops, which is what she wears in the last scene of Grease, because my mom was afraid that someone would stick their finger in my earring and rip my earlobe in half. So I never got to wear hoops until I was a teenager.
Hmm.
But anyway, there's that story for you.
It's a little fun thing. Um,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm going to pretend for a second that Two of a Kind came out in the 70s.
Okay.
Even though it didn't. It was probably written in the like 1981, 1982. Still
Hmm.
kind of reeling from the cultural thing.
Yeah.
But it feels like there's two kind of ways that your kind of depressed, cynical mind could go in portraying God.
Hmm.
And I feel the first one is the worst one, and that's what they did in Two of a Kind, where you're self-inserting human self-doubt and depression into a being that really should not have those things.
Hmm.
Um, the reason that most people on Earth follow a god isn't because the god hates humans and wants to see them all eliminated, right?
Right.
Like that would not be a very appealing religion to a bunch of
No.
people.
No.
Um, the whole point is to give guidance and kind of have that like backbone. Someone's looking out for you.
Hmm.
Even if things are spiraling out of control, someone out there is still looking out for you. And that's what George Burns represents in Oh God, where it is this like reeling with this revolution that didn't happen and things are still terrible. Everyone is still dying and things aren't looking to get better. The Cold War is still ravaging the
Hmm.
world. And like you could easily do that where it's like I'm depressed and I'm cynical. I'm going to have the most powerful being in the world have the same opinions that I do to
Hmm.
justify my cynical nature. But I think the more like hopeful outlook is to do what they did with Oh God, where it is the whole world is evil and they don't necessarily react the way that I think God would want to them to react to a prophet that is basically giving just a word of hope and just being like, we can fix it. We have everything available to us that would allow us to fix it. Um, but nobody listens. And that's where the cynical edge comes in. It isn't that God is cynical, God is
Right.
hopeful. God
Mhm.
wants society and humanity to be better. Um, and I feel like that messaging is just very on point and very nice.
Yeah, I think too, if I think about some of the history around Christianity at that time, specifically Christianity, now that's a very narrow lens. Obviously, you know, I'm looking at it through the history that I know that the Jesus movement was happening. Um, in the early to mid 70s, there was a kind of a revival that was happening in the Christian church. The Jesus movement was taking off. And so some people that were kind of some people who were hippies actually like made this transition over into Christianity. If you think about 1977, you're right. We are talking about a time where we're starting to get the religious right, the Christian right happening and that kind of stuff. We are right on the cusp of that happening because
Mhm.
Jimmy Carter is president at this time. Uh, so that is a really interesting time to have a movie like this, but also a very interesting time to have a character that, I mean, he comes after that televangelist
Yeah.
guy, and really calls him out, and this is where we're really starting to see that sort of um, character, that sort of pastor, preacher, whatever, kind of start taking rise.
Yeah.
Is kind of toward the mid to late 70s, where definitely making a statement about this pastor who is looking for money, and he's on TV and is like, bring the money
Right.
sort of thing, and obviously crooked and does not have the right motivation. um Paul Sorvino in that role was
He's great.
great.
Yeah.
I loved him in that role, and I kind of went out to IMDb to see, what else I know him from. His daughter, Mira Sorvino, won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for the Mighty Aphrodite. So she won a Best Supporting Actress for that, and she was in Romy and Michelle's high school reunion with Lisa Kudrow. Those are kind of the two movies I know her from.
Nice.
But she was very, very young when she won that. I think it was a Best Supporting Actress Oscar. Um, but Paul Sorvino, so like I always knew him in relation to her because she was much bigger at the time. When,
Sure.
but her rise to fame was very short. It wasn't really like she didn't stay at the top of her game for very long.
Yeah.
But Paul, I feel like I saw him on all kinds of things, but when I went out to IMDb, I didn't really see anything that I knew him where I would have felt some connection to him. So maybe
Mhm.
maybe my memory of him is this movie. It's very possible.
Maybe.
Um, but yeah, I think the criticism of that evangelical televangelist sort of movement was very pointed.
Yes.
That portrayal was very on the nose, and I can't disagree.
No, yeah.
I think I think that was a good take to take,
Yeah.
good take to have, but, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I think that's how you do the cynical edge. If you want to
Mm,
have your like your altruist, super selfless character like God would be,
mhm,
and you want to have them still kind of critique society, is you have to have like this big negative force be
mm,
the thing that good person is critiquing. You don't
mhm.
want something good to be critiquing or to be cynical about something good.
Yeah,
It's like that doesn't necessarily work.
yeah, you're
Um,
right.
so it would make sense, and I'm sure uh, if God does exist somewhere in the ether, he probably doesn't like the Joel Osteens of the world that use
Mm,
his words to profit. And that's like
mm,
explicitly what's happening in Oh God with Paul
mhm,
Sorvino's character, where I think George Burns even says like he got rich and powerful using my words until he ran out. And now he's just
mm,
saying whatever to get people to give him money. Which I just, and that whole thing where we see him like preach to all those people,
yeah.
and it's like the moment that turns, where he's just like, just speaking like neutral good, just like, praise Jesus, he will be
Uh-huh.
helpful, he's a good guy, but he wants you to give me money. So we're gonna send everybody out. All of these people are gonna come in the wings, and they're gonna be it's like, oh, and there's like a guilt trip thing too that he also does
Mm,
with that, where it is like, oh, someone's trying to shut us down. We need your
mm,
help. It's up to you to make sure that we can spread the word to as many people as possible. And like, I think that whole scene, that might have been when I said it. I'm like, oh, this is so
mhm.
perfect of like its
Yeah,
criticism of these huge mega churches that would kind of turn into televangelists in the 80s.
mhm.
It's just wow, wow,
Yeah,
very, very, very well done, I think.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Uh, Definitely looking at it through the lens of today,
Mhm.
looking back on it and saying, "Oh yeah, I can name like 6 people right off the top of my head who, boy, they look just like that character,"
Mhm.
and And that is really disheartening because that's part of what has made kind of been the downfall of Christianity, I think, in America is
Sure.
this whole like it's for profit thing.
Yeah.
It's not it's just not good. It's not good at all.
Yeah.
The hypocrisy and stuff is pretty glaring. Yeah, we didn't get much from any of the other religious leaders. Maybe a few sentences here or there, but we didn't really get much from anybody other than that particular character who's kind of a blowhard. So,
Speaking of, Donald Pleasance
yeah.
is in this movie.
Mm,
I need to
yes.
bring that up.
Yeah, I did some research on that. So I do have some things for you too on that. So you go
Oh,
ahead.
nice.
You say
Uh,
what you're going to say and then I'll explain some things to you.
okay. Well, I don't know if I have a whole lot to say. He's barely in the thing. He maybe has
Mm,
two lines, but
yep,
he's
two
like
lines.
third build. And like in the opening credits, I was like, Donald Pleasance is in this movie. I was so
Hmm.
excited. And he's barely in it. He just plays one of the other people at the like religious tribunal that John
Hmm.
Denver is kind of like uh, telling his story to. And he says like one line, otherwise, it's all the televangelist guy. But
Hmm.
if you don't know who Donald Pleasance is off the top of your head, he plays Sam Loomis in the Halloween movies, who is Michael Myers' doctor. And he's the one that comes in on the first Halloween after Michael escapes. He's like running around like, oh, he's the shadow. He's the most evil guy I've ever seen. There's no conscience behind those eyes. He's just a being of pure evil. He's basically that guy. And he says that
Hmm.
a bunch of times in the movie to a bunch of different characters. Just kind of like, we really need to hammer in that this guy's bad news.
Oh.
And he kind of just like shows up in other Halloween movies. I
Mm.
think he's in the second one where the hospital explodes and he gets
Mm.
exploded. But don't worry, he shows up in either Halloween 4 or 5. He's
Mm.
back. He turns out he didn't die and he just has a little scar. He was
Oh,
completely blown up. But
it's a
he's
miracle.
it is a miracle. And he comes back to give the age-old message that we all want to hear is that Michael Myers is a bad guy and he's pretty evil. So he's a real important character in the Halloween franchise.
Yeah.
But I was still excited to see him in this movie.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, you were right. He only has two lines. Let me tell you a little bit of background on that.
okay.
It said most of his scenes were cut from the final film. So apparently he was in it more. It
Oh,
says he's the fourth build despite being in only one scene and having two lines of dialogue. So he apparently was in it a lot more and they just kind of edited his scenes out of there. So that's why
weird.
he was billed so highly in the opening credits, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they specifically talked about him. So that because I don't watch. I saw Halloween many. I was in seventh or eighth grade, maybe.
Sure.
Those kind of movies are not my jam. So I had no idea who he was, but you were super pumped when you saw it. You had made a comment. I'm like, I have no idea who you're talking about right now. But apparently, it was a big enough deal that they highlighted it in some of the trivia and stuff I was looking up about
For
this movie.
sure.
So he's apparently beloved.
Yeah, yeah. I I don't know how beloved he is. I
I don't
know
know.
he's in like other movies. Like he's in You Only Live Twice and like The
Mm,
Great Escape. He's in like actual movies before he
I
became
see.
like a horror guy. That
Yeah.
was the second time because then once Scatman Crothers was on there, I'm like, that's the guy from The Shining. I'm so excited.
Yeah. 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 I was curious. I always try to do a little bit of research into the movies we watch. And so
Yeah.
when I saw that particular bit come up, I was like,
Jerry.
Jerry's going to want to know that.
I did want to
Make
know
a
that.
note.
I'm very I'm glad that you did some research because I was
Yeah.
very curious why he was that highly built.
Hmm. Yes. And I think the other interesting thing to bring up about this movie is the fact that Carl Reiner is the director.
Oh yeah.
Um, So Carl Reiner if you don't know, well, he's Rob Reiner's dad. Rob Reiner is one of my most favorite directors of all time. The Princess Bride. I think he did Sleepless in Seattle,
Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club. He played.
Did,
No, he didn't do the Breakfast Club. That was John Hughes.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Did Rob Reiner do Ferris
Um,
Bueller's Big Day Off?
I think that was John Hughes too, maybe.
Oh, I'm getting them confused.
Yeah,
But he
Rob
played,
Reiner
what was it,
was in All in
Bonehead?
the Family too. He played Meathead
Meathead.
on All in the Family as Rob Reiner. So his dad, Carl Reiner, is a comedy legend in his own right. And his BFF is Mel Brooks, uh, which I feel like I read somewhere, and I did not take a note on this, I don't think, but I think I had read somewhere that originally he was thinking about God being played by Mel Brooks, which would also be great.
Oh, yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah, I think I read that somewhere. I don't think I took a note on that, but I thought that was interesting. Anyway, they were best friends, and they lived next door to each other. And toward the end of their lives, both of their wives passed away, and so they would have dinner at each other's houses every night. And they'd just sit there together and they'd watch TV and eat dinner. It was very sweet. Anyway, Carl Reiner, very very like well known, well respected comedian, director, whatever. So anyway, he's the one that directed this movie. So I thought that was kind of fun. I'm going to give you just a couple little tidbits of trivia, if you don't mind. Is this a good time, or is there anything else you want to discuss?
Go ahead. I'm interested.
Okay. So William Daniels is the last surviving ensemble cast member on this film. William Daniels, of course, the voice of Kit. What's his name from Boy Meets World? Mr. Feeney? Mr. Feeney on Boy Meets World. The voice of Kit from Knight Rider. William Daniels. Anyway, he's the last person in the cast that's the ensemble cast that is still living.
Wow.
Terry Garr, who played John Denver's wife, she died in 2013 from MS.
Oh.
So, or I'm not 2013, I'm sorry, 2024. So fairly recently, October of last year, she had MS and died. So now William Daniels is the last one. This is interesting that I think you may find interesting. In October of 1977, it unseated Star Wars: A New Hope for 1 week in the #1 spot at the box office.
That's crazy.
I know, but just for 1 week, and then Star Wars went back to being #1 again. I thought that was really interesting. I can't imagine anything taking the #1 spot from Star Wars, but it did. So
especially this movie. This isn't like a big blockbuster.
Right.
It's like it's kind of a character drama.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was a popular movie.
Yeah.
John Denver and George Burns were very beloved people. But the idea that it would kick Star Wars out of the #1 spot is a little bananas.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, it was Star Wars was #1 for 15 weeks at the box office, but there was one little blip in the middle where Oh God took its place. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. When we talk about the writing of this movie, it won for the Writers Guild of America. It won the best comedy adapted from another medium. And that writer is Larry Gelbart, Gelbart, Gelbart. So he won for best comedy writing adapted from another medium. He was also nominated for an Academy Award for best writing screenplay based on material from another medium. And then in the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, which is called the Saturn Award, it won for best fantasy film. George Burns won for best actor.
Nice.
And Carl Reiner was nominated for best director. He did not win. And Larry Gelbart was nominated for best writing. So George Burns, and then just overall fantasy film, it won. So it received some acclaim. It was well loved, though. I do know that people really enjoyed it. And then I would like to do just a short deep dive on Terry Garr, who I love. Terry Garr was in a ton of movies in maybe there's 10-year span, 1970s, mid-1970s through the mid-1980s. She was in so many good movies, including Young Frankenstein in 1974.
Yeah. Speaking of Mel
Close
Brooks.
Encounters of the... What's that?
Speaking of Mel Brooks.
Yeah, Mel Brooks. Good call. Yes. Uh, Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977, which is also a huge
Same
movie.
here.
In Tootsie, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in 1982. So 1982, she was in the movie Tootsie. That's with Dustin Hoffman.
Oh,
She lost to Jessica Lange, who was her co-star in the movie Tootsie. They were both nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and Jessica Lange won. So that's kind of interesting. And then in 1983, she was in Mr. Mom. That is my movie, other than Oh God, that I really knew her from. That is with Michael Keaton. Um,
yeah.
she played Michael Keaton's wife. I loved that movie as a kid too. So that's really where other than this one, Mr. Mom was the movie that I really loved her in. Also, she played Phoebe's mom on Friends, which was such a
Oh,
delight. We're talking about the 90s now. It's 20 years past we've really seen, or well, I guess 10 to 15 years after she was kind of hitting her peak,
sure.
to see her come back playing specifically Lisa Kudrow's mom. 'Cause their physical resemblance is very,
Yeah.
man, they look a lot alike. So it was a
Yes.
perfect casting, and it was so wonderful to see her. I remember when I saw her come out, I was like, oh my gosh, I love her so much. So that was exciting. And then this little tidbit for you, Jerry, that I think you'll really enjoy. Terry Garr danced in 5 Elvis movies.
We're gonna bring this to
Oh,
this show too, huh?
just telling you. You'll have to watch for her when you're watching all your Elvis movies. She did 5 Elvis movies
Does it say
as a
which
dancer.
ones?
It doesn't.
Oh, shoot.
It doesn't. I didn't deep dive that far into it, but I just thought that was kind of interesting little tidbit that I should definitely bring. I'm sure
Oh,
it's out there somewhere.
she's in bad ones.
Oh, toward the end.
Well, she was in Viva Las Vegas. So
That's a good one.
that's a good one. She's
Mhm.
also in Kissing Cousins. Not a good one.
Okay. Okay.
Not a good one. um, I see Fun in Acapulco.
Okay.
Acapulco.
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 Yeah.
Uh,
Acapulco.
which
You've been there.
yes, I have been there. Elvis has not been there. Want to know
Oh,
why?
why?
Despite the movie being called Fun in Acapulco, they did not. Well, they did shoot in Acapulco. Elvis was not allowed in Mexico. A,
Because of the hips?
no. That's a
Oh,
good guess.
yeah.
Famously, this is a tangent.
Okay.
Elvis was very popular, but did not travel outside of the United States very much. Do you know
Mm.
why?
He was afraid to fly?
No.
Okay.
Colonel Parker had tenuous immigration status, so he was not allowed to leave the country.
Oh,
Therefore, Elvis did not leave the country.
interesting. That's interesting.
But specifically with Mexico, there was an article released in the height of Elvis's power that was a fake interview with him.
Mm.
And the fake interview said that Elvis said that he would rather sleep with 5 African girls instead of 1 Mexican girl.
Whoa. Oh,
This
that's bad on so many levels.
this was not a real quote.
Wow. Oh, okay,
Just,
not a real
that
quote. I
is
was like, oh my
not a
gosh,
real thing that Elvis said.
that's good. I'm glad to
At
hear that.
least
That's horrible.
At least he didn't say it then. I'm not going to
Okay.
rule out that never said anything to that effect. He did
Yeah.
not say it. This was a fake interview that someone
Wow.
just wrote because I believe there was something along the lines of they wanted to book Elvis for a show in Mexico. It was like some sort of media magnate wanted Elvis to do a
Mm.
private show for a party. Colonel Parker said no because he couldn't leave the country. Therefore, he kind of did this huge smear campaign. Elvis was
Mm.
wildly unpopular in Mexico for that reason. So,
Wow.
Elvis never went to Mexico.
Okay. Did they shoot any scenes from that movie though? Because
They
I
did.
bet there's cliff diving in it. Was there cliff diving in it?
All of the scenes that were shot in Acapulco were shot with a body double for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's a
Yeah.
little
I
fun
mean, it's
fact.
really known for its cliff diving there.
Yes.
So I would imagine it's probably in the movie. I've never seen that one, but that makes sense.
Yeah. So, there's a little bit of
Wow.
Elvis trivia.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's terrible,
Oh, it's bad.
but also interesting.
It's bad, but also it's
Wow.
like I don't want to smear Elvis's name because he did not say that.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but
Huh.
that's why Elvis
Okay.
never left the country and why Elvis specifically never went to Mexico.
No idea. So what other two movies did she dance in?
The other ones that I recognize that are his, I see Roustabout,
Mm,
which is one of his. And let
okay.
me see. I don't, I don't, so that's four. You said she was in
Okay.
five?
Yeah, they said five.
Is, oh, no, that's not an Elvis movie.
I mean, I only know the big ones. I don't
Yeah,
know.
is What a Way to Go? Is that an Elvis
Mm,
movie?
I don't know.
No, that's Shirley MacLaine.
Shirley MacLaine.
Yeah,
I like Shirley MacLaine.
I'm not sure. I can't find it.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I see four for sure, but
All right.
that's interesting that she
Yeah.
was a dancer
Yeah.
in a bunch of Elvis movies.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was interesting too. I didn't know. I didn't know she had a history of dance. That was
Oh,
interesting. So
that
anyway.
is interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, well, that's all the interesting information I had for you as far as research goes.
Hmm.
I I'm glad you liked it. I don't
Oh,
know. Do you
good.
think you would go back and watch 2 and 3?
No.
Or you feel like 1 is it, I'm good?
I don't want the sequels to ruin how much I like the first one,
Mm,
so I think I'm
yeah,
good. Unless I find
yeah,
out that they're also good, then
yeah. Have you
maybe.
looked at their letterbox scores?
Nope.
So, um, I definitely watched the second one more than I watched the third one. I remember thinking the third one was kinda scary,
Scary.
because George Burns plays both God and the devil, and the devil one freaked me out a little bit as a kid.
George Burns as the devil freaked you out?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it did. Um, and that's the one where I was saying last week the main character sells his soul so he could be a famous rock star. He
Oh.
sells his soul to the devil. And so that's the story of the third one.
Hmm.
It's called Oh God, You Devil.
Oh God. Yeah, there's Oh God Book Two and then Oh God
Yep.
You Devil.
Yep. And
Wow.
Oh God Book Two, it has a little girl. And I remember it being a very sweet story. I don't remember the plot really, other than that he talked to her through fortune cookies. That's the only
Oh, nice.
I mean, she did meet him, but that was that's how he first reached out to her, much like, the note in the lettuce for John Denver.
Right.
This was a fortune cookie is the way that he talked
Hmm.
to this little girl, and she was adorable. That's all I
Interesting.
remember.
Well,
Are you looking at the scores?
I'm not. I was just looking on IMDb, and
Oh,
they are
okay.
rated a little bit worse, but not
Hmm.
like substantially. But Oh God is
Oh,
only at a 6.6 out of 10, which I feel
okay.
like is criminally low for how good the movie is. Um, but
I still can't believe that.
Oh God
I can't
2,
believe you liked it so much.
Oh God,
Okay.
Oh God 2 and 3 are both sitting
Uh-huh.
around a 5.5. So
Okay.
not very good. The tagline for the second one,
Yeah.
you can tell that they may not have had any ideas about how to sell this thing, because the tagline just says, "And the Lord said, 'Let there be another movie,' and lo, there was another movie." So,
That's funny. I like that.
and
That's kind of
the
funny.
picture on the poster for Oh God 2 is George Burns on a motorcycle, which I think is
Oh,
pretty
does he
sweet.
have a cigar?
No cigar. He's wearing a long white scarf that is blowing in the wind, though, which is pretty
Okay,
sick.
yep. Yep, yep. Okay, so on the third one, I wonder if when he's the devil, he was smoking a cigar.
Yes, on the poster
Okay.
for Oh God, You Devil, good George Burns is sitting in a cloud, and then
Uh,
Devil George Burns is standing in fire and smoking a cigar,
uh-huh.
lighting it with
That
his thumb.
Oh, that's like his trademark, that cigar. That's
That's
that's his
interesting.
trademark. I kinda watched to see if he was going to have that in Oh God, but he didn't.
He did
There was no
not.
cigar smoking
That would have
in
been
Oh
a little
God.
weird.
Yeah.
I think he even
Yeah.
says tobacco was one of his oopsies or something in
Oh,
Oh
I don't
God.
remember.
Because
That could
did,
be.
did someone ask if they could smoke? And he was like, tobacco. Ugh, that was one of my mistakes too. Something like that.
That could be. I don't remember that line. Yeah, they were saying that originally, he was on the Dinah Shore show on the
Yeah.
uh, John Denver was on Dinah Shore. Originally, that was supposed to be Johnny Carson, but
Oh,
they he didn't want to. I think, if I'm remembering right, he didn't want to be associated with it, so they went to Dinah Shore instead, which
sure.
was fun to see
Yeah,
Dinah Shore.
it is.
One other thing I thought was interesting, just to harken back very quickly, is the reaction of his kids, where
Oh, yeah.
he's on all these talk shows and how embarrassing dad is, because everybody says he's crazy and he's trying to say he's not crazy, and his son is like, I'll just walk home. Didn't want to get in the car with him. That made me kind
Yeah,
of sad. And
it's
his
sad.
daughter then turned around and walked away from him. That was, oh,
Yeah,
broke my heart a little bit for poor John Denver. His
I
own
know.
children disowned him.
I know. And that does kind of segue into something that I wanted to give a little special commendation for.
Mm,
John Denver is amazing in this movie. I
mm,
was
mhm.
not expecting the performance that we got from him,
Ah,
especially because I don't know if he was in any other movies. I
yeah,
don't
I
think
don't know.
so.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I was expecting, uh, whenever like a musician like tries acting and it's
Mm,
always like flat and you can tell that they didn't really prepare for it. They don't really have any
yeah.
acting training. They just kind of show up and just say the lines. John Denver is really good. He's very
Mhm,
good like at emoting. Like I
mhm,
know this is base level stuff, but like his acting was actually pretty solid. I like
mhm.
and moments like that where his kids and his wife are like turning on him, there's like a real sense of like conflict going on in his
Mhm.
performance where he's like, I know that this is what's happening to me, but nobody believes me. And even the
Yeah.
people around me have like pretty much tried to disown me or don't want to be
Mhm.
associated with me anymore. And like that comes through in the performance. And I was
Mhm.
shocked. Like, wow, John Denver, you go.
Oh,
So
look at
good.
him.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a very, you have talked about in the past, talked about, like, he just seems like a really nice person, and
Yeah.
he really does. He seems like he kinda has a Mister Rogers feel to me.
Yeah.
Um,
I could see that.
just very kind and gentle soul. There's nothing that's, like, hyper masculine about him.
No.
He is like a Bob Ross hippie. He's a hippie.
Yeah.
Bob Ross, Mr. Rogers sort of person. Um and I thought that was a good choice, like to have somebody,
Yes.
because even though he didn't believe in God necessarily, there wasn't a hostility or an anger or
No.
like anything where you could see it kind of taking a weird turn. He was he was open, he was skeptical,
Yes.
but he was open to the possibility, and I just feel like his demeanor made him a really great person to play that part.
Absolutely.
Um, it also made me think about, and he didn't really talk about this in the movie, but it did make me think about, he was very much a Moses character.
Sure.
Um, you know, God chose him to go and talk to his people and share his message, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And Moses felt very much like John Denver did, where he was like, I am not worthy to do this. I have a stutter. I am not a good speaker. Like Moses very openly was like, I don't like to talk in front of groups of people and I stutter. And so that's why God allowed Moses to bring Aaron along, and Aaron was Moses's mouthpiece.
Mm.
So I thought it was interesting then that not that not that John Denver wasn't a good speaker, because he was, but he very much felt the same thing. Like, who am I to say, I didn't even believe in you until like 5 minutes ago. Who am
Right.
I to go in front of the country and advocate for you? Because, I just thought that was kind of an interesting, kind of a parallel between the two. Neither of them felt equipped to do what God had asked them to do.
Right.
But they were both successful in what they did because he chose them for a reason.
Hmm.
And, they both had their own qualities about them that made them good for the job that God had chosen them for.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, I thought it was good. I'm glad you liked it.
I did
Good.
like it a lot.
Good.
Um, yeah. So I don't know if I have anything more to say about this movie. I
Yeah.
borderline loved it. Um, I don't know. This might be one that I might revisit years down the
Mm.
line and
Mhm.
only improve, I think. This is a
Yeah.
grower. And I
Mm.
think now that I know where it goes, I think
Mm.
there's gonna be stuff that I pick up in the
Yeah.
in the beginning of the movie in Act One, where I'm like, ooh, there's
Mhm.
probably some more stuff in there that isn't
Yeah.
as heavy-handed as it gets in Act Two and Three. Um,
Yeah, I kinda laughed. I had forgotten about the fact that he first comes to him through an intercom, and it made me think of Charlie's Angels with Charlie,
oh
where
yeah,
you never see Charlie, but you have that intercom sitting there. That
right.
kinda made me giggle a little bit. It almost even looked like the one that was in Charlie's Angels. It was funny. I
Yeah.
enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot.
Oof.
Um, okay. Yeah, I don't
Good
really have
movie.
anything else either. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it too. It was not what I remembered, but and again, I was watching it kind of feeling nervous, like, oh, I hope Jerry doesn't hate this with all of his soul. So I'm glad
Absolutely
that you
not.
didn't. I'm glad you
No.
didn't. Good.
No. And this is the first time that we've done this on this show. But if you haven't seen this movie, watch Oh God.
Mm.
Track down a copy.
Hmm.
If it means renting it, you gotta rent it. This is a movie
Yeah.
that's worth renting. And I'm very
Hmm.
interested to see what you guys think. If
Hmm.
other people my age go back and visit this movie that, has not been talked about in a long
Hmm.
time, I wonder how other people my age would think. So I'm
Hmm.
going to posit that question into the great ether. I would like more people to revisit it, and I want some conversations with folks. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good. And I think too, like we are a good example as far as I'm a person of faith. I thought it was good. You are like not really sure how you feel about things and you liked it too. So you don't have to be somebody who, is a Jesus person or a God person or have any particular faith. You can look at it and you'll still get something out of it. It is a good watch, I think. I
yeah.
agree.
And
Yeah,
plus,
I agree.
you're supporting John. Well, you're not directly supporting John Denver,
He's
but,
dead.
John Denver was a very lovely, lovely man,
Yeah.
fought for a lot of good issues, fought for
Hmm.
human rights, and fought against racism. So,
Yeah.
so you got to support artists that do that these days,
Yes.
even though
He liked the Muppets too.
And he liked the Muppets, which is a big
What,
plus.
what were you gonna say? Even though John Denver?
Even though John Denver is not alive, you still got to support
No.
artists that did do that. So watch your
Yeah.
Paul Newman movies and watch John Denver, this movie, and listen to his albums. Listen
Yeah.
to was it Back Home Again? That's the album that I
Mm.
listened to. It's really G dang good. There's a couple
Mhm.
really hokey country songs on there that I'm not a huge fan of, but there's a lot of really good stuff on there. So check it
Mhm.
out.
Yes. I I know how to play one John Denver song on the piano. It's called Today. And the
Oh, I
only
don't know
reason I
that
learned
one.
how to play it when I was a kid was because it was in the key of C, so there weren't any sharps or flats.
There you go.
And, I don't know that I've ever even heard him sing it before, I just know it's one of his
No.
songs, and the words are so pretty,
Hmm.
and, I don't know. The other one that I feel like I know really well that's his is "Sunshine on My Shoulders Makes Me Happy." Do
Oh
you know
yeah.
that song?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, so good.
Just a
I
lovely
love
human
him.
being.
Yes, but I did love the Muppets Christmas album. That was like a highlight for me. Yeah, I think watching movies with I think anytime you can watch a movie where it is with someone who is portraying a thoughtful, sensitive character,
Hmm.
and especially a man who is not like hyper masculine or like toxically masculine or
Yeah.
I just think it's lovely and he just has a very peaceful presence about him, so I hope
Yeah.
people watch it because he really is wonderful.
Please. Please. That's gonna be the message of this episode, I think, is that more people need to watch Oh God. That's what
Yes,
I'm
I
coming
think so
away
too.
from it.
Yeah, I am gonna watch 2 and 3 because I just wanna just because I
Ooh.
have memories of it, I will watch them at some point, but
Well, I'd
I
be
won't make you
interested
watch
to
them.
see.
Oh,
Well,
oh,
no,
how
I'd
I
be
feel about
yeah,
it?
yeah, you should bring that to the show.
Okay, I will let you know once I watch them. I don't know if those are more available, I'm betting probably not,
Probably not.
but, yeah, I am excited to revisit them. Sometimes it's just fun to do that, to go back and see things, and sometimes you're pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes you're not, like Two of a Kind, that was horrible.
That was really bad. I'm
I
not gonna
know,
lie.
I know.
Maybe one of the worst scripts I've ever seen
Oh,
on
wow.
on the big screen.
Uh-huh.
Every decision that was made in that movie was wrong. I'm going to say
Except
that.
for Scatman Crothers, I mean, that was a good
That
decision.
was a good casting decision. Every decision in
Yeah.
the writing of it was wrong. Like, okay, sorry, this is not a two of a kind discussion, but
Yeah,
can I point out how much of a missed opportunity one scene was? Where
okay.
it is the big climax. It
Mhm.
is up to the angels to defeat the devil and get John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John to fall madly in love together. And the plan is going. Scatman
Yes,
Crothers and John Travolta have been talking on their horse and buggy, because that's a thing in this movie that they do.
yes.
And Scatman Crothers drives it. And they're
Yeah.
talking, and he drops John Travolta off, and he picks up one of the angels, and he says, "Let's go talk to God." And then they come back 2 scenes later. "Oh, rats, guys, we talked to God," and he said, "No." It's like, why even have that be a part of the movie? Like,
Yeah.
you introduce that Scatman Crothers and this dude are gonna go off on their own little thing. Wouldn't have been nice to show that? Wouldn't have that have been
Yeah.
a nice scene where Scatman Crothers has to defend humanity to a god that is already so done and
Yeah.
cynical? Uh, God doesn't even have to change his mind. You just need to have a case. Write a case for humanity, because the movie doesn't do that, and that's what the movie is about. And instead,
Oh,
it's just ad-libbed in there. "Well, we already talked to God," and he said no.
he said no.
Like, that is wasted potential. And the whole
Oh,
movie is full of that, where there's decisions that don't make any sense.
yeah.
And Olivia Newton-John like falling in love with someone that, the first time they met, he robbed the bank that she worked at, and the second time they met, he broke into her apartment and like snuck up on her.
Yep.
That is, I. This is not a two of a kind discussion. That's where I'm going to leave it. It's a very bad film. Don't
Yes,
watch that
it
one.
is. It is very bad. Don't I agree. Don't watch it. It is terrible. I just remember thinking she was so pretty. That that's what I remember. I just loved her so much. Anyway, I obviously had issues
That's
when it came to her. She was a blind spot for me.
that's okay. Everybody's got one of those.
Everybody's got one. I'm going to do some recollection correction corner if you are good with me moving on to the next thing. How do you
Yes.
feel?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So last week we were talking about the fact that David Bowie has two different colored eyes. We were
Yes.
talking a little bit about that, and you had said that he had had an accident or
I thought it was
something
some
to that
sort of
effect.
fight. He got into a bar fight
Okay.
or something.
Yes. So what I did was we had talked about like what color eyes are the most popular, etc. So let me give you the rundown.
All
This
right.
is worldwide. 79% of people have brown eyes.
Sure.
That's more than I thought. 79% is a lot.
There's a lot of
Um,
people in India.
True. And Africa, yeah, that's true. Like you have a continent.
I mean, like this, there's, what is it, like the population circle? Have you ever seen that map?
No, I never have.
Oh, there's like a circle over like India and the Philippines
Mm.
and Indonesia, and it's like more
Mm.
people live in this circle than outside of it.
Does that include China?
I'm sure it includes part
China's
of
in
it.
that area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. By far and away, more brown eyed people there.
Yeah.
Um, so 79% of people all over the world have brown eyes. 10% are blue. So now we're up to 89% of
Wow.
people. So 79 and 10. 5% of people have hazel. So that's you and me. Um, 3% have gray,
Hmm.
2% have green, and 1% has heterochromia, which is different colored eyes.
Yeah.
Our friend David Bowie. Yeah. So hazel's 5, gray is 3, green is 2. So yeah,
Interesting.
I thought that was interesting. Okay, so 1% of people have heterochromia. Okay, well, how does someone get heterochromia? Well, that is an interesting question as well. It is very rare for someone's eyes to change color after infancy,
Hmm.
which is what happened to you.
Yes.
Um, so weird. About 2.5 to 3 years old, your eyes changed color, and it's extremely rare for there not to be a cause. But let me give you what some of the causes are.
Hmm.
It's called. There's two different kinds. There's acquired heterochromia, and then there was another one that I think where you're born with it. So
Sure.
this is acquired heterochromia, as in you start with the same color eyes and you end up with two different colors. So or or the color of the eyes changes after infancy. So you would have had acquired heterochromia
Oh.
because even though your eyes are both the same color, they changed after you were an infant. So they
Hmm.
would say you have it, which I thought was interesting. So it's not just two different colored eyes. It's just anytime somebody's eye color changes after infancy.
That is interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Possible causes: glaucoma and glaucoma medications,
Sure.
swelling in the eyes. Certain medications can cause it. Neuroblastoma, which is a cancer, an eye cancer, a specific eye cancer, separate from neuroblastoma, but like specifically a different type of cancer. Those are the main possible causes, other than eye injury. Okay, so here's where our friend David Bowie comes in. His eyes were the product of a teenage fist fight. So you were right. That resulted in okay, anisocoria.
Oh.
So this is interesting, which is a condition in which a person's eyes have different sized pupils.
Oh.
One eye is always dilated. So he doesn't have two different color eyes. He just has
Oh.
one eye that's always dilated. So it looks brown, but
Huh.
it's not. Yes. Isn't that interesting?
I did not know that.
I know. I thought that was super interesting. So yeah, it was the result of a fist fight,
Hmm.
but it is a different condition. And he just has one
Interesting.
eye that's always dilated.
Huh.
Yeah. So there you go. Uh, Anisocoria. I don't know, something like that. Okay, so that's that. I was also we were talking about Angelica Houston because we had been watching the Life
Life
Aquatic with
Aquatic. Yeah.
Steve Zissou. And I had talked about the mini series Buffalo Girls. I said it was that she played Annie Oakley. I was incorrect. She played Calamity Jane.
Ah.
So yeah, not Annie Oakley. Although there was an Annie Oakley character in that miniseries, it was not Angelica Houston. Angelica Houston played Calamity Jane.
Ah.
Um, so that was my only correction on that.
Okay.
And that is the end of Recollection Correction Corner. I just thought that was interesting information to share.
That is
So,
interesting information.
yeah. So I don't know why your eyes changed color. It's extremely rare, and you don't have any of those conditions.
Well,
They did say if you have a child, PSA, everyone, if you have a child whose eyes change colors after infancy, you should take them to the doctor and have them checked right away because it could be something serious. And so you want to make sure that you get your kids checked if that happens. But my friend Jerry had it happen, and there's nothing wrong with your eyes. It
no,
just, they said sometimes it happens spontaneously and they just don't know why, but sometimes it does have a cause. So there you go.
I guess I'm a freak of nature.
Heterochromia. Yeah. I mean, it was such an interesting thing. I had never met anyone who'd had that happen. You're the
No,
only person I know.
I I think I'm the only person I know too. I don't think I've ever
Mhm.
met anyone. I do know someone that has two different color eyes.
Okay.
Um, but it's very subtle. The person I
Mm.
know has like it's blue and then it's like a bluish green. So I think
Okay.
if you weren't really paying attention or if you weren't looking closely, you probably wouldn't even notice.
Mm.
It was something that had to be pointed out to me.
I see.
So,
Yeah, they were talking about another condition where the outside of your eye is a different color than the part that's closest to your pupil.
oh,
So, like maybe the outside of your eye is green and the inside of your eye is blue,
mm.
where you have like
Oh, I
more
see that.
variation in the
Yeah, yeah.
color. Yeah. Yeah. So that was interesting, but that had a different name. It's not the same thing.
Mm.
But anyway, I thought that was interesting.
Well, stay tuned next week for Recollection Correction, where she will find out what that condition is.
I will make a note right now.
I was joking, but I'm glad you're taking it seriously.
I take it very seriously. I take my job very, very seriously.
This is an important gig.
I know.
Well,
Yes.
I was going to pick a movie for next time, but
Okay.
I found out that it was removed
Oh,
from Max, so we won't be
can we get
watching
it
it.
anywhere?
It is available to rent, but I'm sure it
Okay.
will be back on Max eventually.
Mm.
It has
Okay.
been kicked off and re-brought on a bunch of times. Um,
Okay.
and I might ask you in private if you've seen it before, because I
Okay.
think you may have.
Okay.
So instead, we are going to be doing something. I actually just looked it up, if it was still on something, and it is not. So I'm
Okay.
going to have to think a little bit on the fly.
Oh no. You
I
don't have
know.
a whole list of movies that you have a running list for?
I mean, I do, but it's just in my head
Oh,
where
okay.
I'm like,
I have
these are
mine. I have a
movies.
private list on Letterboxd.
Oh,
I know, I didn't even know you could do that, but I have a private list on Letterboxd of all the movies that I wanna watch together, so,
oh, okay.
you should do
Well,
that too.
I probably should, but I think I might go back to one of uh, the things that we started that maybe I picked the
Mm,
wrong one. I think I'm going to do a different Ghibli movie because
okay.
you did not like Princess Mononoke. It was too gross.
It was too gross. It wasn't my favorite. I didn't hate it, but there were definitely parts I did not like. Yes.
Yes. And I recognize now that that was a failure with myself and that I have made a grave mistake. So I'm going to try to fix that. And I'm going to be doing a movie that I'm sure everybody already knows. We're going to be doing Spirited Away.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Yes, there's some interesting things. Maybe you'll do some research on the awards because I know you always do.
Yes,
A
because
little
it won Best Animated, yeah?
It did.
Oscar.
It is
Yep.
the only non-American animated movie to win
Mm,
Best Animated Feature.
interesting.
I think.
I've
Well,
been
I'm trying to think. Has anything is Flow? Is that non-American?
Oh, I bet you it is international. I feel like that might be,
It
not
might.
American.
So that might be not true anymore. Um, because that got it. Did Anomalisa win in like 2016?
I don't think so.
Okay, because that's like French.
I
Uh,
don't think so.
I think it was nominated,
Um,
but
that is possible. So I have been doing, as you know, I'm looking up Flow right now. Um, I have been memorizing all of the Best Picture
mm,
winners, and I've gotten to where there are only 10 that I've like my best score is I've been able to name all of them except for 10.
wow,
It's impressive, isn't it?
yeah,
The sad part is I do it every night before I go to bed. I go through and I try to memorize all of them. I'm to the point where all the ones I can't remember are at the beginning,
mm,
and they're like The Lost Weekend, like
oh,
some um Grand Hotel, like some that I had, I have no connection to at all. So
yeah,
I'm trying to just memorize. But part of that playlist on Sporkle.com, one of them is name all of the all the best animated
oh,
Oscar movies,
yeah,
and a good majority of them are Disney Pixar, of course, as you would imagine.
hmm,
Um, but Spirited Away, obviously, Studio Ghibli was on there, and then I'm trying to think. Just oh shoot, I can't remember. There are just a couple that are not Disney Pixar.
Happy Feet is
Not
one,
very many. Okay, Happy Feet. I don't remember if Ice Age was one, maybe? I can't remember.
maybe.
Anyway.
The only reason I know Happy Feet 1 is
Mm,
because it was Wally. Wally may have come out after Happy Feet, where it was like the
okay.
next year. And I guess for those who have not seen Happy Feet in a long time, it's mostly mocap, where a lot of the dances are mocap actors that are dancing, and then those animations are matted onto the models. Um,
Mm,
and so Pixar had a little jab at that in the credits
oh,
for Wall-E at the very bottom. It
uh-huh.
says something along the lines of all of the animation done for this movie is has been hand done. No motion
Oh,
capture has been done as a part of this movie. As like a
okay.
little jab towards Happy Feet that it won the
Mhm.
year before.
Okay. Interesting. That's hmm.
And I don't
Yeah, different animation style.
yeah,
Uh,
I don't have anything
hmm,
against mocap. I just think that's interesting.
yeah. So I'm looking at Flow,
Okay.
and it says it was the first Latvian film, so
Interesting.
Latvian, to
Okay.
win an Academy Award and a Golden Globe.
Hmm.
It was also the first independent film to win an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature.
Sure.
Um, it was it was co-produced, so in Latvia, Belgium, and France.
Hmm.
So,
Sure.
but they consider it a Latvian film, but there were 3 locations. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of interesting. It doesn't have
So
any dialogue. Yeah, it's
yeah,
wordless.
yeah, it's all silent. I know that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of interesting.
So
Yeah.
Spirited
The
Away
good
is no
majority of them
longer.
are Disney. Yeah.
Yes.
No
It's no
longer.
longer the only foreign animated movie to win.
Mm.
So that is interesting.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, we're going to be doing Spirited Away. I I actually have, let me get my copy of it cuz it's kind of interesting. Because my copy of it is not an American version. I have
Oh.
a
Oh.
Japanese copy of
Look
Spirited
at
Away.
that. That's cool.
I found this at a record store for $5.
Ooh.
I don't,
So have you watched it? And is it
this,
in Japanese? And well, I mean, I guess, yeah, I guess they are. They're usually dubbed or whatever
uh,
when we're watching them or
yeah,
subtitled.
there probably would be subtitles. Okay, I was checking to see if it was region coded, and it is
Mm,
not. So I should be able
okay.
to get it to play on mine. I don't
Oh,
know if I'm going to watch that version. It is a DVD, so it's probably not going
yeah.
to be the best quality.
Mm,
And all of them are on Max. So
oh,
I'll probably just do
oh,
that.
good.
So yeah, we're going to be doing Spirited Away. I have
All
not
right.
seen this movie in maybe 6 years.
Do I need to
Um,
go out and check to make sure there's nothing gross in it?
there is nothing gross in it. I'm going to
Says the
say that
guy who said
confidently.
you didn't think there was anything gross in the last one either.
Do you want me to look up the parent's guide on
Look up the
IMDb right
parent's
now?
guide and tell me if there's anything gross.
I don't think so. I would
Okay.
be shocked if there was, because this is, um, it's one that like people will show their kids to get into
Okay.
Ghibli movies. This and
Okay.
like My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh,
Um, I don't. Yeah, doesn't. Looks like there's like one scene where there's a little
okay.
bit of blood, but it's
Okay.
nothing to the extent that Princess Mononoke was.
Okay.
So
Great. Okay.
I think you'll be okay,
I think I'll be
but
okay.
please let me know if you feel uncomfortable, and I can make a switch.
No, it'll be fine.
Okay.
I can just do the Christie move for anyone who ever needs this tip. Should you be watching something that is disgusting and grosses you out, you take your forefingers and you put them in front of your eyes, and then you take your thumbs and you stick them in your ears so that you
Mm.
can cover your eyes and plug your ears at the same time.
Wow.
That's my move, my signature move.
Well,
It works great
oh,
because then you don't have to hear the splat noises either, which is gross. Sometimes just as gross as like watching it,
well, how are you gonna know
especially
it's
splat.
over?
Especially, well, I look at the person next to me. I'll peek out of the corner and I'll look and see if they look like they're scared. And if they still look scared, then I keep my eyes closed. Or I'll lean over and say, "Hey, is it over yet?" But most people who see movies with me know that I'm kind of a wimp like that, and they'll just, like, hit me when it's over to let me know that I can open my eyes.
That's probably a good call.
Yeah. Yes, it's true.
Well, I don't think you'll have to worry about that with Spirited Away. It doesn't.
Okay.
The Parents Guide has violence and gore at a medium, or not medium, a
Oh,
mild.
mild. Mild is good. Okay,
So
great.
yes, very low. I think we should be okay.
Super. Okay.
If you are really worried about it, we could do My Neighbor Totoro, the one that is explicitly made for 7-year-olds. Um, if you,
I think I'll be okay.
okay, okay. Well,
I need to know before we leave, are you planning to talk about Grease on the on your other show?
yes,
Are you going to talk about Two of a Kind on your other show too?
absolutely.
Okay, great.
So, I mean, I feel like you already kind of got a taste of my thoughts and opinions on Two of a Kind.
Mm-hmm.
But we did watch Grease in addition
Hmm.
to the 2 other movies that we watched. We had a little bit of a movie marathon.
We did.
And I will be talking about that in on the Boy Time podcast, which is the other show
Okay.
that I do. Also, where I watch all the Elvis movies. So we
Yes.
just posted the one where I talk about Jailhouse Rock, which is
Hmm.
a great movie.
I was going to say, I thought you liked it. So good. That's great.
Same rating as Oh God. I gave Jailhouse Rock 4 stars.
Wow.
I'm gonna give a little spoiler for next week's. I already
Mhm.
watched King Creole.
Yeah.
It's better than Jailhouse Rock.
What? Really?
It
Okay.
it is a legitimately great movie
Huh.
that Elvis just
Wow.
so happens to be in.
Okay.
And the music is phenomenal. I'll go that far.
I I am shocked.
I am too. I didn't I
Shocked,
did not
I tell
expect to
you.
like any of these movies. But
And now you have 2 that you've liked.
well, I know it only goes downhill from here. This is officially like the last good one.
I thought Viva Las Vegas is well loved,
Viva
but
Las
maybe
Vegas is well liked, but this is like the golden.
okay.
That's not even true because half of these have been pretty terrible. But this is before he joins the army,
Yeah.
so there's that like he's like I think King Creole. He's still like 23. He's
Mm,
really young and naive. He wasn't dating a teenager, which is a plus.
yeah.
Um, so like it goes King Creole into GI Blues, which I've heard is
Okay.
like backdoor US Army propaganda.
Mm,
So not looking forward to that, but that's what's going to
yeah.
be coming up next.
Okay.
But yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah.
I've not even recorded the King Creole episode yet. I've just watched it,
Okay.
but I loved it. So
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
stay tuned to the Boy Time podcast and also check out Boy Time. Uh,
Yeah. You're full of surprises today.
I am.
Yeah. You liked an Elvis
Oh,
movie. You liked my George Burns movie.
I know.
Yeah. So many surprises.
But
Oh, I also listened to the Harry Belafonte song that you recommended, and
oh,
I very much enjoyed it. I should have followed up on that.
it's
I thought it
great.
was really great. I loved it. I listened to it in the morning when I was getting ready, and it put me in a nice little chipper mood. It was great.
It's a good song, isn't it?
It is a good song. I did not get to the sad one. Uh, I wasn't in the mood for some sad songs this week, so maybe next week. We'll see.
That's
Is that
okay.
behind you on the wall?
Yeah, Pink Moon is
Oh,
right there.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, you can hardly see it. It's so dark back there.
I know. I need a fill light.
Yeah. You
It's
can't
okay.
see all your records.
Uh,
But you should also tell people, sorry, I just interrupted you. Go ahead.
well, I'm not usually recording this late, is what I was going to
Oh,
say. Usually I record during the day.
mm.
But what were you going to say?
You should also tell the people about our amazing experience at Paisley Park
Oh, sure.
and how amazing it was.
I was kind of tossing that around. It's like being like, maybe I should talk about that.
Yeah, just for a couple minutes because it's so interesting.
It is interesting.
Or are you going to talk about it somewhere else?
Did you want to talk about it here? We can.
Oh, I would love to talk about it a little bit if you want to.
Sure.
But if you're going to do it on one of your other spots, you could not.
I mean, I probably will bring it up on the Boy Time
Hmm.
podcast, but
Hmm.
I'm interested because I mean, we
Hmm.
did talk about it after we went, because that was kind of the reason that you guys came up here.
Yeah. It
Was
wasn't kind of, it was the reason we came up there. And to see you, of course,
that was the kind of.
but also to see Prince's house.
Yes. Because I guess for those who may not know, Prince has a house out here in the Twin Cities. He's from the Twin Cities, but he has a house, Paisley Park, in Chanhassen, which
Mhm.
is not a super big town. It was even smaller when he was around and when he built the house. Now it's kind of developed. His house is in the middle of like a business park, like
It's such a weird spot.
a bunch of office buildings around.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, we went to go take a tour of it. They still run tours there. We actually sprung for the ultimate experience because we wanted to really see everything that there was, and it was worth it. There was a lot of really, really cool music stuff, and I'm not a huge fan of Prince's music in general. Not that I don't like it. In
Mhm.
fact, I think he's maybe the best guitarist ever.
Mm,
But I don't listen to his music a whole lot. Um,
mhm.
in fact, I've listened to two albums. I didn't really like Purple Rain was maybe like a 5 or something. I loved Sign of the Times though. That was the album that I really liked was Sign of the Times.
Oh, I mean, I liked Sign of the Times too, but Purple Rain is a 5?
It wasn't really my cup of tea.
Sacrilege.
I mean, there's great songs on Purple Rain, but there a lot of the
Yeah.
songs I it just didn't quite click for me. But that was also
Mm.
6 years ago that I listened to it, or maybe 5.
Oh.
So it's been a hot
Oh.
minute.
I thought you meant you'd just recently listened to it, you know. Okay,
No,
okay,
no.
yeah.
So yeah, that was the last time I listened to Prince's music was
Mhm,
5 years ago, when we were doing our top 50 Rolling Stone albums that we ranked, and both of those were on there. So
yeah.
I'm not even a huge fan of Prince's music particularly, and it was very, very interesting.
Mhm,
And that like we kind of got to see. It didn't. They didn't really take us like upstairs into where like I guess like the living quarters would be. I mean, I imagine they have to preserve some of that because a lot of it is left
mhm.
as it is or how it was.
Yeah.
But we did get to see a lot of the like studio spaces because interestingly, he kind of converted his he converted his recording studio into his house. I was gonna say it the other way,
Yeah.
but he essentially like made this complex to be a place that he could write and record and produce and make music videos for, like an all-in-one kind of workstation where he didn't have to go back and forth from the Twin Cities to LA to write stuff and then produce it in LA. Wanted everything to be done in one place. And so we kind of got to see all the studio space that he had. We got to see a lot of his guitars and stuff with all the same strings. We even got to hold one of his guitars, which I didn't want to say at the time, but
It was dreamy.
well,
It was
then
dreamy, dreamy.
maybe I won't say what I was going to say.
No, say what you were gonna say.
I'm a little bit dubious about that whole
Oh,
situation
you are?
for one reason and one reason only.
Yeah.
Because later on in the tour, we were given a little sneak peek for the room that they had set up for the 40th anniversary of
Mm.
Purple Rain, where they had a bunch
Mhm.
of pictures and memorabilia on the wall with little plaques saying what everything was. And they had the guitar that we held behind glass. I
Mhm.
have to imagine that they give the guitar a replica to the people, the grubby little mitts of the people that pay a certain amount of money to take this tour, and they keep the real one behind glass.
I think that they probably used more than one guitar for the movie, and so they have one behind glass and a second one that they allow because we had to wear archivist gloves,
We
like, it
did.
was and they didn't let you walk around with it. Like,
No.
you stood in one spot, you held it, they took your picture, he took it away from you.
Yeah, they really didn't even want you like touching the strings at all.
No, no, nothing. So it kinda I would imagine if you're doing especially if you're using it for a movie, there would be more than one. That's just my guess.
And given Prince's laissez-faire attitude with his instruments,
Yes,
I would
it's
imagine they would
true.
have multiples. So
Yes.
maybe maybe it was real. But when I
Yeah.
saw that, I'm like, "Oh, that kinda sucks." But it
Yeah.
was cool. We got
It
to see
was.
all sorts of stuff, and I think the ultimate experience was worth it because my favorite part of the tour, we were in Studio B, which was basically left untouched, and they were able to pull up some never before released demos of like Prince's actual like thought process and creative direction for the song Race,
Mhm.
where we kind of get to see him put it together, where he's like working with all these soundboards, trying to like make the song into what it is until eventually dropping all that out. And it's just his vocals, and you can hear his heels clicking, um,
Yes.
which I thought was really funny because like the
It
tour
was so
guide
cool.
brought up where he's like, "You're going to hear some clicking." And in my head, I'm like, "Oh, well, that's a click track." He has to explain what a click track is to people who maybe aren't familiar with the production side of music. He was like, "It's not a click track. That's actually just him clicking his heels so that he can keep tempo." I'm like, "Wow,
Yeah.
that is really, really interesting."
It was so cool.
Yeah, and
I
like
loved that part.
it was the best.
Mhm.
And I think it helped that like that whole studio was very much set up so that the person in the middle of that room has like the best acoustics because it's kind
Mhm.
of built round with like jagged edges that kind of point all the sound waves into one spot. And we just so happened to be standing in the middle. So we may have had the best spot in the house, but it was absolutely phenomenal hearing that. And there was a couple other tracks that they played for us, and it was just amazing. So,
It was so cool to hear, like, because they always started with the full production,
yes.
of the song, the way you know the song. And but he would talk to us before he started playing it to say, like, this is what we're going to be focusing on when we're playing this song. And so then you hear the whole thing, and then they just start stripping pieces away bit by bit until you get to the very end where exactly what you're talking about. He's clicking his heels against the floor, keeping tempo, or we're hearing his voice without any sort of
Oh, yeah.
filter or anything over the top. It is just his raw voice laying tracks, or it is just him doing the background vocals and hearing the harmonies and the orchestrations that he put together, those arrangements for background vocals on a song where you're like, man, I don't even remember hardly ever hearing those things. And they take all that stuff away, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's like 10 parts on this,
Yeah.
and they are so intricate. I mean, I was in such awe of his talent with
Oh, yeah.
multiple instruments and his writing and his lyricism and arranging and his ear. It was just so mind blowing to think about someone who is so incredibly talented,
Yeah.
um, and prolific, really, really prolific, and a
Absolutely.
fantastic performer. Like, so you have all these talents to be a songwriter, but like to then be able to watch this person perform on stage and he's just electric. I mean,
Yes.
it was the coolest. And one of my favorite parts was that we got to play ping pong
Oh,
on his
yeah.
ping pong table that was in the recording studio with his paddles. It
Yeah.
was the most exciting thing because my favorite Prince story is the one where he played Jimmy Fallon at ping pong. So I already knew that story. It was one of my favorite stories. And so when we walked in there and we saw the ping pong table, we were like, oh my gosh, that's his ping pong table. And then they were like, go ahead and play. Here's his paddles. I was like, oh my gosh, we get to play on his ping pong table.
It
It was
was
such an
sick.
exciting moment. I
It was
know.
really cool.
It really was. It really was. And the other things that I super loved, we got to see his Oscar, which
Oh,
I didn't even
yeah.
know he won an Oscar. I've never seen an Oscar in real life. I was like, there's an Oscar, there are his Grammys, there are his People's Choice Awards, like
Yeah. All of
all
his
of these
platinum
awards.
records.
Oh my gosh, it was so cool. And then he had platinum cassette tapes, like,
Right.
you know, the old regular old cassette tapes back in those cassette tape days.
Mhm.
So they'd have the album and then it would have the cassette tape in front of it in that same, um, same frame. It was, oh man, it was the coolest. And like the second floor, he had a tailor shop up on the
Yeah.
second floor. So we couldn't go in, but from that first floor, we could look up and see the windows for that tailor shop. And you could see some of his costumes, thousands of costumes, they said,
Mhm.
but also that he had the teeniest, tiniest feet. He wore
He was
a
so
women's
small.
6.5. Oh, he was so tiny. Women's 6.5 shoe. I was like, oh my gosh, those, I mean, I don't even know when I wore a 6.5. I was very early elementary school, I think. I was in a women's nine by the time I was in third grade. So I was like a kid, little tiny kid. It was, and then we saw like the Purple Rain outfit
Yeah.
and like, I don't know. It was so cool. And I like Prince. Like I really like Prince. I was super into him in middle school. And so I really did like him. Uh, but I don't consider myself like, I don't know the deep cut stuff.
Sure.
I know the popular stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but even so, like I think someone who knew nothing could walk into that tour and just be amazed at that 64,000 square feet of production space, performance areas.
Hmm.
Yeah, the one room held 1,400 people for him to do live shows right there in his home.
Yeah.
1,400 people. It's unbelievable. And we got to sit on a couch where his butt was too. That was very exciting.
Yeah, I think another one of my favorite things is that we got to see his like favorite guitar, which I
Yes.
knew from his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the George Harrison "My Guitar Gently Weeps," which is, in my
Yes.
opinion, the best musical performance of all time. And that
Mm,
made me very happy.
yeah.
Uh, just seeing that was like the one thing that was like the one thing that I like knew Prince from, or I'm like,
Mm,
I like his records, but that is something I absolutely love. So to
mhm.
see that was really special.
Yeah.
Man,
Well, and the story behind it too is so fun.
yeah,
'Cause our tour guide, Tommy, if you ever go, you want Tommy as your tour
yeah,
guide.
he's great.
He's a super fan and a very big music fan, and had gone to Prince's house during the middle of the night when he would do those pop-up things at his house. He would sit on Twitter and wait for him to get out there and say, "I'm doing a show at 1:30 in the morning," and our friend Tommy, he would go. But, um, yeah, I think hearing the story of that guitar, like, it's his favorite guitar. I think he said he bought it for $30 at a gas station.
Yeah,
Like, and this was his most prized guitar. He used it for all of the big shows, and like you said, he did it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think he said he played it at the Oscars too when he was nominated there.
hmm,
Like any big performance, he used this $30 guitar he got at a gas station.
yeah.
So cool.
It is really really cool. So go
Mhm,
check out Paisley Park. It's kind of buried. I
mhm.
didn't even know I had been going to Chanhassen because they need help over their post office. They need some
Yeah.
help, so they've been sending me over there. I didn't know. It's like a minute away from where I've been going. I just was like, I was driving back to the post office one day and I look to my left and I see the gate with the two love symbols. I'm like, that's Paisley Park. I didn't even know. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
and it doesn't look like, I mean, you think of Prince and there's all those the flashy colors and all those fun outfits, white, stark
Yep.
white cube. It's not
There
really a
no
fun looking building.
windows.
Yeah, no
Yeah, no
windows.
windows. It looks like a warehouse space
Yeah,
with a little dome on the top. There's nothing remarkable about it.
right.
And you can see how it would blend right in,
Yeah,
especially in this industrial area. Like at the time, it was a farm in the middle of nowhere. Now it's in the middle of an industrial park.
yeah.
And it blends right in. The other story I thought was really funny that Tony told was that he used to live in town. He likes his music really loud when he would play. And so he would play, and his neighbors would complain because the noise, because when they would rehearse, he just really liked that volume cranked up. And Tommy's like, "Oh my gosh, what are you talking about? If Prince was my neighbor, I'd have been getting my lawn chairs, calling all my friends. We'd be sitting in the front yard listening to him play." But his neighbors didn't like it. So that's why he moved out to the middle of nowhere, that
Yeah,
time in the middle of a farm.
I can't believe that.
I
Like,
know.
and I know that like Tommy was like kind of joking, but like really though, like
Yeah.
you are next door to a bona fide musical genius. Uh,
Mhm.
someone who's like every single composition is so intricate, and
Mhm.
you have first seat. You're the first
Yeah.
person besides him that is hearing some of this stuff, and you complain. What is your
Mhm.
problem?
I know, it's crazy.
I
Crazy.
can't imagine that.
No. No, it was wonderful. I'm really glad we went. I'm glad we spent the money to do the extra stuff because I feel like that extra stuff is the stuff that was, I don't know. The music stuff was just so great.
Yeah.
I loved it. Like, I liked seeing all the things too, but to me, the most impactful part was to listen to how he put that together. I was just in awe of that, and to be able to
Yeah.
see those mixing boards and all the instruments and
Oh yeah.
things that he had. It was just really phenomenal. It was a great tour. I
It
loved it.
was. So
Yeah.
go check out Paisley Park. Depending on when this episode comes out, they are playing a Goofy movie sometime soon.
That's
So
right.
maybe go see a Goofy movie at Paisley Park, which is
Yes.
an odd sentence that I didn't think that I would be saying.
Well, and we found out Prince's favorite movie of all time is, Finding Nemo, so
It's a good
he
pick.
was a fan.
It's a good
He was a
pick.
fan. Yeah, and, yeah, they show movies there periodically, so
Yeah.
you could actually go into Prince's house and go into the room where he used to play with Stevie Wonder and
Oh,
Madonna,
that
and
would have been a great show.
wouldn't it?
That
Unbelievable.
was yeah. Our tour guide Tommy was just like, yeah. One time I went and it was Prince and Stevie Wonder. I'm like, that might be the best show of all time. You
Mm,
have
can you
you have
imagine?
two bona fide musical geniuses just chilling and jamming together.
Yes,
Come on,
and they were in that smaller room. I
yeah,
think there's only a capacity of what, 200, 2 to
something
300
like that.
maybe?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a super huge venue, and he also said that he always had chocolate chip cookies being baked when they were doing those, which I also thought was very fun. I liked that a lot.
Ah, man,
What a host.
that's so
Yeah,
cool.
anyway, it was really great. I would highly recommend, definitely, if you can, try to make your tour with Tommy. He does it on the weekends because he has a full-time job during the week.
Yeah.
Uh, but he was delightful, and everyone there was so wonderful. Like,
Hmm.
from the guy giving you your tickets up front to the security people, like everyone was just so kind. The people in the gift shop, it was great.
Yeah, yeah. And everybody clearly had a lot of respect for Prince
Mhm,
and was working to kind of preserve his legacy in that way, which I thought
mhm,
was really, really nice. Yeah, there wasn't like a pimple-faced teenager running the cashier's desk who maybe knew the song Purple Rain, but like
mhm.
hadn't heard any other Prince song. Like it was people that knew their stuff and they cared
Yeah,
a lot, which I
yeah, a
which I
lot of
really
older
appreciated.
people.
Yeah.
Mhm, yeah, there were a lot of people older than me. I'm 50. I'll be 53. I don't even remember, have to do the math. Yeah, I'll be 53, and almost everyone there was older than me
Yeah.
that was working.
That's
Um,
nice.
it was lovely. These people really care about him, and so that was, uh, I don't know. It was just a good environment. It was a great experience all the way around. They run it like a machine.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. I found out, oh, I didn't tell you this little tidbit. So I was talking to my coworkers about it, showing them the pictures, of course, because it was so exciting. And everybody wanted to see the pictures, and so I showed them. And I was talking to my friend Reese, who works with me, and Reese's stepmom is a makeup artist,
Mm.
um, and has worked with all kinds of famous people. In fact, Reese's dad was in the band Stone Sour. So
Oh.
Reese is used to being around lots of musicians and stuff. And Reese was saying, "Oh, did I ever tell you that my stepmom worked for Prince?" No. Oh my gosh. I'm like, "What did she do?" She said, they said that that their stepmom helped with wardrobe.
Oh,
So she may have worked up in that little room up above that we saw.
that's
I'm like,
cool.
"Oh my gosh, wouldn't that have been the coolest?" I was like, "No, you never told me that. That is the coolest. I can't believe that." So fun. Oh,
That is
anyway.
great.
Yeah,
Well,
I thought that was great.
I think the one little thing I'll say to end this is I think we were obviously recommending people go visit. I think
Yeah.
people should try to visit sooner rather than later. Is that a
Mm,
lot of the people that work there like knew
yes.
Prince or at least had
Mhm.
met him before and had personal stories to tell. And seeing as they're older than you, like you said,
Yeah.
we don't know how much longer that these stories are going to be around. So you gotta jump in when you can. You gotta
Yeah.
seize that opportunity. I think it's definitely worth it. So
Yeah, and I bet you that every person that gives a tour there has some personal, not maybe not everybody, but that there would be people who have personal experiences with him,
yeah,
that every tour would be different because everyone had a different story. And so, I bet if we had gone to another tour with someone else, they would have had other stories that,
right.
that they could tell. So, yeah, I just think anytime you can get a first person account like that with those little details, it's just so special.
Yeah,
Also, we saw Kid Rock in there. Uh,
we did.
Kid Rock, yeah. He wasn't it that he was doing a concert that night, and so he
Yes.
wanted to tour. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
he was in town. He was doing a concert, so he and his
yeah,
bandmates, I think, were essentially killing time. So they wanted to
yeah.
tour Paisley Park. So
Hmm.
they came by.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm
yeah,
not a fan. I don't really know
I
anything about him. I don't know his music. I know nothing. So
I
I've
don't like
heard
him.
that he's maybe not the best. Yeah.
Bad guy.
Yeah. But anyway, he was there. That was interesting. That
He
made it kind of
was.
unique.
That was interesting and unique. And I saw him. I I was like, I thought I saw him like after we saw him, first, and then once we got into
Mhm,
the big room,
mhm.
where like Prince would perform, I thought I saw him on the couch, and I was like tempted to be like, "Hey, you're a problem." Like seriously, I do not agree with like half of the things that you've done in the last 5 years, and I
Yeah,
think
see, I
that
don't know anything. Is he like,
he turned
on the wrong
full on
oh,
right wing grifter, where like
oh, I don't like that.
he was like, haha, cool country hip hop fusion guy. And now
Right.
he's full on like vaccines cause autism, like
Oh,
full on crazy right wing grifter.
right wing. Yeah.
So, and like you could tell too, like all of the people around him were wearing cowboy hats or old dudes with giant beards. And I'm like, you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of hillbillies that all are nuts.
Yeah.
So that was like, oh,
Yeah.
great, this guy's here. I was not happy that he was in the building.
Yeah. I didn't know anything about him.
Yeah,
So I
bad
just
guy.
I just knew his name. He used to be married to Pamela Anderson or something?
I don't know.
Am I getting that wrong? I
I
don't
have
know.
no
I don't
idea.
remember. He was married to somebody famous. Anyway, I was like, "Ooh, Kid Rock, that's cool." Like, but then and somebody in our group was saying they were going
Yeah,
to
they
the
were
concert
seeing the
that night or
concert.
something. But I just don't know anything about him. I
Yeah.
just thought it was kind of cool that like musicians, and I bet this happens a lot.
Oh yeah.
Musicians that are coming through Minneapolis just go over there, just see it, and they still record stuff in those studios,
Yeah.
which I also think is cool. But yeah, I bet that happens quite a bit where there's, people in town to perform, and so they wanna see it while they're there. That's
Probably.
that's cool. I
Yeah. I
love
mean,
that
I
people
would.
still care.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, his legacy is still very much alive.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool.
that was
Anyway,
fun. That was something
it
fun
was.
what we did.
Yes, it was.
But yeah, I think that'll do it for this week's episode of the Love the Mom
Mhm,
podcast.
mhm.
Next time, of course, will be Spirited Away. I'm very
Yes.
excited. Um, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Support your local library and call your mom.
Bye, everybody.